Shall I be accused of wishful thinking if I promise the reader that oil painting is not at all difficult as a medium? It is, in my opinion, far easier and more straightforward than pure watercolor painting. And so many amateurs have discovered when, in despair, they have switched from one technique to the other. For whereas transparent watercolor painting is often admitted by professionals to be a matter of hit or miss, and only expert skill can score a hit, oil painting is a medium in which mistakes can be corrected by painting over or scraping out and repainting until something of the required result is achieved. I don't say that these various expedients are easy in themselves, and I'm not promising that the finished picture will be free from obvious toil and perhaps tears, but I do say that there are far more legitimate devices by which you can redeem an oil painting that has got stuck than ever there are when a watercolor starts going wrong. And during each stage, you will be learning how to paint the right way of mixing your colors and the best method of applying them. In short, the mechanics of the craft, so that you can presently concentrate on the way that you as an individual, and this is all important, can best develop a personal technique. For in the last analysis, it is this which will mark out your paintings as different from the rest. In the following chapters, I shall be giving you many hints and warnings, which you will have possibly read before and perhaps already accepted. On the other hand, there may be other statements which will appear to contradict flatly those presented in other books. In both cases, it would be wise for the reader to test out for himself the truth of such assertions. For instance, I have read recently that there is only one true blue, ultramarine, whereas Prussian blue is condemned as crude and dull, and of little use in landscape painting. Now, it just happens that, except in rare cases, I have given up ultramarine for many years, as I found it far too purple for the average sky blue. And even when heightened with flake white, it tends to clash with nature's greens. On the other hand, Prussian blue is for me a lovely true color and a sound basis for most summer skies, and with a touch of alizarin crimson will give the right hint of purple if required. It is absolutely permanent and is indispensable for matching certain greens when mixed with your yellows. If you favor a purplish blue, then I suggest cobalt, as it is not so strong as ultramarine. With a touch of one of your reds will give you a number of cool grays. Again, I have read that emerald green is recommended as a color that stands alone in brilliance. That may well be, but it is not a nature green. And even when mixed with chrome yellow, is a dangerous, pretty color for representing foliage or green fields in sunshine. I personally never use it, believing rightly or wrongly that viridian is the only made-up green you need, and this, of course, only to be used in collaboration with one of your yellows. But in the end, the choice of these and other colors that come up for review must be determined by trial and error by yourself. And if I am in danger of overemphasizing the importance of self-determination, it is because so many beginners and adult amateurs miss the joy of painting through the very fear of forgetting the written word. It is because so many beginners and adult amateurs miss the joy of painting through the very fear of forgetting the written word, the authority for which should be tested out before meekly being accepted. Personal preference is born out of individual experiment and enterprise. Tools of the trade. First, let us see what things you will want. The bare essentials, that is, because you can go on adding this and that as your painting develops, but to start with, only the absolute necessary tools need be purchased. Paints, of course, head our list. These should be students' colors, and get the large size tubes. A small number of nice fat tubes is worth far more than a lot of little thin tubes, however attractive the colors on the outside may be. Here's a list of safe colors which, when you have learnt how to mix them, will give you all the varieties of tints and tones you could wish for. Flake white, 1 pound size, because you'll find you'll use more of it than any other color. Then 2 yellows, yellow ochre and chrome lemon. 3 reds, alizarin crimson, light red, and vermilion. 2 blues, Prussian and cobalt. Green, viridian, brown, Van Dyke, ivory, black. And if you want to make this up to a round dozen, you could add burnt sienna, which is a hot brown, so be careful. These, I repeat, are all you want as a start. To these you can add from time to time raw sienna, raw umber, ultramarine blue, and a special treat, Payne's gray or cerulean blue. Now for brushes. There are 4 at the outside, are all you want. Large, medium, small, and a watercolor brush for small detail. Next, the palette. These can be obtained in 2 shapes, which I will call studio and outdoor, fancy or plain. The first is graceful in design, but as you will see, has less room for mixing. And I should always recommend the second, since you can use it indoors and it will fit into your paint box when you go sketching outdoors. A box, therefore, is essential, and you could get serviceable one at any artist's color man. That's the shop. The size should not be less than 16 by 12, and get one that is not already filled with a lot of colors you do not want. Fill it yourself with your own selection. The paint box will probably have a container for your terps and a dipper. This you will fit on the side of your palette and into which you put your terps. Ordinary terps from any ironmonger is all you want. And buy a good supply, because you will need it for cleaning purposes as well as thinning out your colors when you are actually painting. A palette knife will complete your list. This should be trowel shaped because it is mainly used for scraping the surplus paint from your palette after operations and is more flexible for actual painting. I must not forget to add, you will want plenty of old rags and newspaper torn into sizes convenient for squeezing out paint that remains in your brushes. Between your finger and thumb before rinsing them with your terps. Before setting out our palette, let me give you some additional tips, however obvious they may appear. Squeeze your tubes from the bottom and roll them up as they empty. Always replace the cap on the tubes after use and see the cap is firmly on. Do not rinse your brushes and turps before you have semi-cleaned them with newspaper, as the jar will soon get clogged with paint. Clean your brushes as soon as you have finished painting. It is so easy to leave them till the following morning or even later, and then, well, it is more labor, and the brushes naturally suffer. The turps will be sufficient to keep the brushes soft, but I find that once a week it is a good plan to wash them with some kitchen soap and water. They will last much longer with such care. Some artists like a film of dried paint on the palette knife, but I prefer to keep the blade clean. Now we are ready to put our colors out on our palette. And although there are other ways, I think you will find that this order is logical, and once adopted you will find it automatic, because it is important to keep the same order. Number 1, flake white. Number 2, chrome. Number 3, yellow ochre. Number 3, light red. Number 4, alizarin crimson. Number 6, vermilion. Number 7, Prussian blue. Number 8, cobalt blue. Number 9, viridian. Number 10, Van Dyke brown. Number 11, ivory black. Number 12, burnt sienna. If the colors are squeezed out near to the edge of the palette, there is plenty of room for mixing, for it is this area within the dotted line which must be kept scrupulously clean. And I mean that. It is fatal to let pools of color dry hard on this valuable space, so that you have to scrape them off. Such a waste of time. On the other hand, the colors around your palette can remain. Indeed, if for some reason you cannot paint for some considerable time and do not want to waste what remains, immerse the palette in water, the kitchen sink, or some shallow receptacle, and the colors will remain moist for further use. You will see that by putting out the colors as suggested, I have kept whites as far away as possible from my black. And the Prussian blue is in a corner of the palette, as far away as possible from my sleeve, because it is a terrible color for getting on everything. And is the worst color to clean off. All you want now is something to paint on. Canvas? Yes, certainly. It is one of the best, but there are other materials and far less expensive for our present needs. I suggest an oil paper, which you can obtain from any art shop. It is sold in large sheets, which you can cut to the size required. It is especially serviceable for your first exercise, which is making a color chart. Canvas boards can be used later, but these and stretched canvas are both expensive. Folding sketching stool. For the absolute beginner, I would strongly recommend the making of a color chart. First, squeeze out a small quantity of each color on your palette, and with your brush paint a small square of each tin on a piece of paper or board. This will show you exactly what the color is. As it comes out of the tube, now mix white with each color, making each tint lighter. Let's go back. We first squeeze out a small quantity of each color on your palette. and with your brush, paint a small square of each tint on a piece of paper or board. This will show you exactly what the color is as it comes out of the tube. Now mix white with each color, making each tint lighter. Red will become pink. You will notice the degree of difference in each mixture as the proportion of white is added. You have now a series of tones of the same hue. The degrees are as many as you wish to make, until they are all nearly white.